Hello then folks, and welcome to the Look Back. It's good to see you. My name's Ben. If you're enjoying the Look Back and you're looking forward to this video, drop a like on the video. Let's get that off and running early doors as the Premier League is back. Of course, after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, there was a short break, but they're back. 7 games for us to cover in the Look Back this weekend. And let's begin with the Friday night fixtures, kicking off with Aston Villa versus Southampton. 2 games on a Friday. This can't happen again, okay? There's got to be some rules here, guys. Because if one day they do a Monday game, that'll be 4 days. Watch yourselves, Premier League administrators. I'm watching. It was a 1-0 Aston Villa win, and they stuck with the same system that they played against Manchester City. But let me kick you off with some data analysis. This is their average positions versus Manchester City. This is their average positions versus Southampton. The same system with similar players. A couple of changes in there. Coutinho sat on the left, and Ramsey dropped into midfield, which made them a little bit more dynamic. And Steven Gerrard said they wanted to bring in some ball carriers. And of course, when you play Southampton, you allow yourself to do that. But, and we'll come to City later, what City do to teams is completely disorganised. But you can see from, again, bring it up again, Chris, the average positions of Aston Villa in this game, you can just see how much at ease they are with each other. It looks very uniform. It looks really good. So again, there's a better understanding of what's going on. And it provides you the opportunity to play with a consistency that Aston Villa have really lacked. And Steven Gerrard had a really good interview with Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville afterwards, where they sort of had a little chat about what's going on. And Gerrard sort of basically said, we're trying to do things too quickly here, and we need to be more pragmatic and go back to what made us relatively successful when he first came into the club, right? Allowing players to flourish in a system that worked for everybody, rather than trying to force things through certain players, which hasn't worked for them this season at all. And they were far better for it. Southampton, it's frustrating for them, of course. Back-to-back defeats now against Villa and Wolves. 2 teams that have struggled as well this season. And against Southampton, big results against Chelsea, but are faltering at times. The concern would be Everton at home up next. You've got to win that one. And again, against a relatively struggling Everton side. And then you go away to City. If you don't win those 2 games, or something happens in those 2, you're suddenly 4 games without a win. And then you're playing West Ham, and you've got to win. And that's otherwise the conversation of Southampton being relegated or being in that contention for being relegated again becomes a little bit more prominent, and they don't want that. That sort of pressure is so unnecessary, especially before a World Cup. Like, that's the bit that I find stressful for teams now, is that they're planning for that big moment. But back to Villa then. It was just a much more assured performance. The goal from Jacob Ramsey is great as well. Again, having ball carriers from midfield, it's just taking pressure off other players and allows a system to move forward. And Aston Villa have really lacked that. It's been in like fits and starts, players moving forwards. It was much better from Villa, and they've got to take credit from that. But it's interesting to see how they now approach games from here on out. Because Southampton's a side that you can not do what you want against, but comparably to City, you have more of the ball, especially in a home game. So it'd be now curious to see where they take the next steps and who they play with, like playing Ollie Watkins. You've got to keep doing that. I don't want to see the Ings-Watkins combination again. I don't think it works. I don't think it's right for Villa or this team. And they need to see more from Leon Bailey. And hopefully, if you keep playing this way, eventually you'll get that. And for Southampton, I didn't see Ralph smile once. So we should all be concerned about that, really. The other Friday night fixture then was a Forest 2, Fulham 3 game. Forest scoring goals and not winning again. It's a bit of a theme of the Forest season so far. The Awani header is pretty good, but the defending for Fulham is so bad. Yeah, frustrating. I think the problem for Forest is they go 1-0 up and they look in control, and then they throw away the lead so quickly. Fulham get 3 goals in 6 minutes. Like, it's great for Fulham. It's not good for Forest. And also Willian getting a Premier League assist for Fulham. That's strange. The most impressive thing in this game, arguably, is that Fulham have scored 3 goals. Mitrovic not a goal or an assist, and had a very different type of game that we've seen. Obviously not goal scoring, but linking everything else up, being the hub. I say different sort of game, because he's not scored, but actually that's what he's so good at. But it's a really good sign for Fulham. They are up to 6th now, by the way. 6th Fulham. I know, strange. Because now there's obviously this idea and belief that, yes, he's an integral part of the team, but they don't necessarily need him to be scoring goals and creating chances. And it was looking for a little bit like there'd be a one-man team, but now that confidence the confidence this sort of result gives that team is really, really good. For Forest, blimey, they're still getting to know each other, to be fair. So if there's any criticism, it's probably that they need to go speed dating, but with one another, just so they're aware of everybody. That's my solution. speed dating. Like, offensively, they're not that bad. Like, they seem pretty threatening. Some of the players they've brought in again seem exciting. The defensive three that they play with Henderson, that is not working. And they need to figure that out fast, because we've seen plenty of Premier League sides, regardless of the additions, enter the league, be pretty good offensively, but be completely hamstrung by the fact their defense is letting them down. And again, if you're losing games 3-2 at home, it's kind of obvious where the faults are. The ability to score is obviously there. Brian comes on and gets a goal as well, but they need to figure something out quickly. The problem you've got when you buy, I think it's 400 players it topped out at, that you need to be able to figure out a system that everyone's happy with. And when half the players you've signed aren't starting, blimey. That's a scary place to be in, because ultimately they've been brought in, many of them probably with promises of being involved, and as the window went on, they're probably thinking, that's a rival. I'm all for competition in squads, but you're also creating chaos. You've got the new players you've brought in that are playing, that aren't playing, and the players that were there previously. What a mess. Yeah. Good news though for Forest. This is only 10 games till January, so solved it. They could end up buying 30 players this year. 30 players. So Forest need to find a way to win. And it sounds obvious, but right now, there's no consistency about them. So that was the Friday action then. Let's go forward to what we saw on Saturday. And it kicked off with Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Manchester City. City are an absolute nightmare. I'm going to say this is going to sound a bit silly, they are impossible to play against. Grealish gets a very early goal, which obviously sets the tone for the game, and obviously he responds to some critics. I don't think he did very much after that, other than getting Collins sent off by being sort of stamped on. It's a weird challenge from Collins. It's not a clearance. The ball's quite slow moving. It's not a tackle. It's GBH, viewers, is what it is. I don't really know why he's done it, and he sort of had this look as if to say, I don't know why I've done it. So at least he understands it's a bad thing to do. And while we're on Wolves, they've signed Diego Costa, which I'm not sure solves the problems. Wolves are a very poor team in transition right now, other than when. So maybe not a poor team in transition. The transition's not bad. When they have to counter attack, it's arguably when they look their most threatening. But it doesn't seem completely together at the moment. Say 4 players are attacking, they don't all know which each other are doing. That's the problem they've got. But moving together as a team and progressing forward and forcing teams backwards, City's are really difficult as we saw from the Villa graphic, right? City are really hard to do that against anyway, but Wolves have had this problem against every team. It's becoming, a real source of issue for them. And I don't know how many games they've looked like the best team in so far. And that, to me, is the worry for Wolves fans. And I mentioned it in a video recently, and a lot of Wolves fans were commenting saying, we are worried. And that's what makes it interesting. They currently sit 16th in the league table. It's 1 win from 7. It's not a great start for a team that a lot of people think has got quite a lot of quality in it, which they have, but not as much as City. There's some analysis for you. The problem you've got against City, and I want to boldly say this now, in match week 7, and if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I think they'll go invincible. In that I don't think they'll lose a game this season. I don't think any team have enough. I think teams will draw with them on a pretty regular basis. I don't think I can't see a team that will beat them. I don't think there are many. I think the only team that looks set up to maybe beat them, and it depends on how they play, and we'll come to them later, is someone like Tottenham or Liverpool, because they've beaten them before. So there's a theory of how to do that. And of course, they beat them in the Community Shield, but since then, Haaland scored. I think it's in the 30s, the goals he scored so far. They've got 23 and 7, so they're doing okay. But I think this might be the biggest risk to Arsenal's invincibles. That's how it looks so far. And it's not just because they haven't lost so far. It's easy to say, neither have Tottenham. I don't think they'll do it. But just the way that City play, the way that they constrict you and hold you in, it's impossible. Like, I don't know. I've been thinking about it, right? And Newcastle did it to a degree and got a point against them and pushed them high up the pitch. But it wasn't like City didn't have better chances and they couldn't have won the game. There's an argument to say in a 3-3, right? Newcastle could have won it as well. But it feels like, of the fixtures and the games they've had so far, it felt like an anomaly. It didn't feel like what we're going to see game in, game out. And especially, like, Wolves looked like they had 10 men before they had 10 men, because that's the way City play. They basically neutralise your attack by being so far pushed up and having sort of 3 players in wide areas that just pass the ball around. And then ultimately, when the moment comes and the space can be filled, Erling Haaland's the man to finish it off. His goal this week wasn't even that impressive. It was impressive in a different way. He just sort of scuffs it in from 25 yards out. How do you stop that other than saving it or tackling him? It wasn't great defending, but equally, like, he's a triple threat. He's great in the air. He's good as the last man, and if he can do this as well, blimey, here we go then. As if we didn't know this already, but the way in which he's doing it and the fact he's doing it is the thing that's scary. We should definitely talk about Kevin De Bruyne as well. Lovely assist for Phil Foden's flicked finish. I really enjoyed that. And ultimately, he's got 6 assists this year, more than anyone else in the league, double anyone else in the league at time of recording. So, yeah, what a season he's having. And with De Bruyne supplying Erling Haaland up front, it could be like we talked about Haaland's goals, could be 20 assists for De Bruyne this season, the way in which it's all working out. Scary stuff. They're good. They're really good. Again, hard-hitting analysis. I don't know. The question for the comment section, how do you beat Manchester City? What's the plan? You push up against them. You've got Haaland in behind. You play back. You let them do exactly what they want. I think the only way City lose is if they get major injuries. That's the only way I can look at this. So as much as I'm critical of Wolves here, it's so hard to judge. I think it's the City side, and I'm going to do this every single week and be like, the first team that looked like they could beat them. And Newcastle were close, but not close enough. Like, they hit them on the break a few times and looked dangerous, but I don't know. I hate how impressed I am by it all. All right, speaking of Newcastle, we give them a lot of credit there. And a big moment for Newcastle United fans, players, anyone connected with Newcastle United. You got a decision that was probably a bit unfair on the team you're playing against. Good Lord. I hate football. Firstly, the Billing goal, lovely whipped cross. Well, I say whipped cross, sort of past cross, and Billing flicks it in. And Bournemouth go 1-0 up at a ground, which I've said lots of times before, is a very difficult place to win at. And then Newcastle get their goal, which is a cross. It's a penalty. It's a cross played in that hits the hand of a defender. I don't know what is an unnatural decision, an unnatural silhouette, or an unnatural place to put your arm. But if you are 5 yards away from me and you hit the ball at my arms, I can't do that quick enough. Like, I don't think they should be penalties. I think there's no logic in them. I think if it stops the ball going in the net, then fair enough, you've stopped a goal with your arm. But crosses that are played in that hit arms, you've got arms. Like, there's my demonstration of arms. I don't know why they're given. I think it's grossly unfair in every game we see. I don't know if they need a new, like, I hate this. In VAR now, do you need a new line to say that if the ball is struck, we need a speed, velocity, and then a meter stick. Was it 5 yards away? If it's under 5 yards, to me, it should never be a penalty. Like, it seems so unjust. Newcastle fans won't be able to believe this. Isaac with the penalty, by the way. Lovely finish from him. It's an interesting game in that Newcastle dominate for large parts, really, and they don't lose at home, so the concern isn't really there. But Bournemouth will be really happy with their point. They are now, unbelievably so, viewers, 3 wins unbeaten since Scott Parker left. 3 games unbeaten, not 3 wins unbeaten. That seems a strange phrasing. I would love to see Bournemouth deploy, and they've got to have the confidence to do it, really. That's the thing, because it leaves them exposed in other areas. But to play the 4-4-2 with Solanke, with Kiefer Moore up front, it worked really well against a Villa side that was struggling, but I'd love to see them use that against some of the sides they're expected to battle against, really. I hope we see it again, because it was really good in that first game. Again, it made them a bit more dominant from set pieces as well. 2 bigger boys up there. It's a great point for Bournemouth. It's 1 win in 7 for Newcastle, but they've drawn 5 games. I don't really know what to make of them yet. One thing they are missing is St. Maximin. One thing Newcastle did really well against City, as the example I was using before, was carry the ball forward and allow everyone to get out. And I think that's the thing maybe to stop City, is to get out a little bit. And St. Maximin allows that. They've been without him for the last couple of games. Bruno Guimaraes was back in, controlled things as you would expect. Him and Joe Willock have a lot of the ball for a Newcastle side. But they need to find ways to do that without him in the team. And it's not quite the same with the likes of Almiron and Fraser. I don't know, there's not a fear factor about Newcastle without him. Not as much anyway. And that's the only thing they lack. And I think in the January window, I would expect them to go out and get that type of forward player. I'm really surprised they didn't get in a right winger in the window just gone. So yeah, still something they need. And it would make them a lot better, a lot more dangerous. All right, let's talk about the 6-2 drubbing of Leicester from Spurs. Richarlison started over Son, which ended up not really mattering. But no shots, no completed dribbles, lost possession 11 times in 31 touches, 75% pass completion. It wasn't a good game from Richarlison. Like, it wasn't the... Conte's got a problem. That's the real point here. In that they've won 6-2, but the Spurs clearly have this idea, and Richarlison's signing was a big part of this, to play the three up front, to play two players in and around Kane, and Kulusevski went off, and Richarlison went off. They went to three in the middle, and Son came on to sort of play in and around and off Harry Kane, and they were so much better for it. What do they do now? I don't really know, because they don't play with natural wingers. They play with fullbacks, right, wing backs. The challenge for the penalty from Sanchez is bizarre, like a really bad challenge. Leicester take the lead, which again, against the run of play, almost certainly. It wasn't even, what time was the goal against the run of play? And we'll come to Leicester in a minute though, because yeah, they took the lead, but other than James Maddison and maybe Yuri Tielemans, not just because they scored, because they actually played pretty well in the game, they're in trouble. As for Tottenham, the first half I didn't think was that good from them actually. They played this three up front system, and they're failing to make the ball stick in those areas. They don't really bring each other into play quite as often, and they don't have control of the middle. Like, Leicester had more possession. What was interesting was they weren't aggressive enough, and that's one thing I wanted to point out. In the first half, Leicester won 23 duels to Spurs 17, 7 aerial wins to Spurs' 5, and the second half, when the changes came in, right, Basuma partnered Bentancur and Højbjerg in the centre, completely different. 25 duels to 14 for Leicester, 7 aerial wins to 3 for Leicester. Like, it was so much better. They just looked a lot more controlled in the middle, and I really want to see a midfield. Like, I just want to see Basuma in that middle more, whether it's with Bentancur, who I thought was fantastic, by the way. I know he's done that hat-trick, but before he came on, he was man of the match for me. He's great on the ball, he works hard, he puts himself about, he's happy to be involved in the game and not just sort of like shirk the responsibility, which I think sometimes in the past Spurs midfielders have been criticised for. He takes it by the scruff of the neck, he runs with it, and having someone like Basuma as like his covering partner is perfect because it allows him to move forward. Maybe Højbjerg on the other side as well, but it was like a 3, sometimes a 2, with Bentancur playing just a little bit further ahead. But it was really good, and Spurs again looked so much better with it. But I said at the start, so now a big decision for Conte. Does he stick with that and play that 3 and start games like that, or is this always part of the plan for Conte? Maybe it is. Maybe the idea is to play quite expressive and quite wide, and to force teams back mentally, to force them back a little bit, and then to take control as things start to open up. Teams think there's more space, and then you exploit that with someone like Son coming on, or Richarlison or Kulusevski later in games. Maybe that's the ploy. It all felt a bit England in the first half, and in the second half it felt a little bit more Spurs that we were used to last season under Conte. It's radically different from what they did under Poch. Like, they don't press nearly as much, they're not as aggressive, but we saw in the second half, Conte clearly said to them, go and do more of that. And Spurs, obviously a team that have done it before, felt capable of doing that. Leicester. Oh, God. What do you do? They should sack Rodgers, but they almost certainly shouldn't sack Rodgers. That's how I feel about Leicester. Like, Tielemans had a pretty good game. For me, James Maddison, if his agent's not on the phone now to every single club in the top 10, then I don't know what his agent's doing. It's a really great performance from Maddison. 83% pass completion from Maddison. In fact, we've got his numbers here. Like, for a midfielder that's lost 6-2, it feels so unjust. 7 of his 9 ground duels have been won. Like, he lost possession 13 times, which for a creative player, by the way, in a side like Leicester, it's actually not bad. It's one of those games. His finishes, but he's really good as well. The goal's really nice. 4 key passes, is it as well? Like, shots on target, a constant threat. It must be so disheartening for him to see the team around him really struggle. No more so than someone like Ndidi that wasn't great. Like, not for the goal necessarily, but just generally looks off the pace at the moment. To me, the ball from Evans is the mistake. Like, it's a terrible decision from Johnny Evans to give Ndidi the ball, and then you've got sort of 4 Spurs players going, that's our trigger to go, and then they pressed him and won it obviously, and then scored the goal. I don't know what Leicester do. Like, you sack the manager, it seems obvious because they need a change, but is there anyone more equipped to do that job better than Brendan Rodgers? I think ultimately the answer right now has to be yes, because of where they are in the league table, because it's gone so badly, because they've got 1 point from 7. There must be someone out there that can do this better. I don't know who that is. And you've only got to look at who's going at the end of the year and the team that's there right now and who's likely to leave. Who wants this job? It's poisonous right now. It's not a fun thing to do. Vardy watch. 4 touches, 4 completed passes. And in the 16 minutes he was on, they conceded 2. So, make him manager. Solve all the... I've done it. Make Jamie Vardy the manager. All right, away from Saturday on to Sunday. It was Brentford 0, Arsenal 3 in a game where Brentford went back to the system that beat United. I've been talking about the Brentford system going, are they going to bring out this like 3-5-2 thing again? They did. Didn't work at all. Oh dear God, it didn't work at all. Defensively, they look pretty like stable and steady, and I don't think they look too bad. Like the 2 goals, it's a flicked header from Saliba to the back post where he just gets there first. Yeah, in a way, bad defending, but not horrendous. And again, for the goal, the cross from Xhaka to Jesus is really, really good. And it's not horrendous defending. To me, it's just a really good cross, like to the point where I think it's Janssen. Can't quite believe how good the cross was. It's really good movement from Jesus as well. Give Arsenal the credit. The problem that Brentford found, I think they went into this game thinking, oh, we'll just do what we did against United. You know what? We played this system. We feel comfortable in it. And at parts, they looked pretty good. But the lack of transition into attacking play was a real problem. And that's going to happen, though, when Arsenal are aggressive. There's attacking movement and they actually want to win. Those are 3 characteristics that in that game, United didn't have. So that made life a lot more difficult. And an Arsenal team that sort of fought back after the disappointment of losing to Manchester United, because football's funny, they really did come back with a bit of verve and a bit of arrogance as well. And it was interesting to see them without Martin Odegaard and how they would function. Of course, Vieira gets his goal, as well as looking like a valuable member of the team. I think so far this season, he's come on in like a few moments and you've seen bits of him and he's looked a little bit out of place and a bit shell-shocked and a little bit like, oh, blimey, this is the Premier League. But in this game, because he started the game, he found his way in a little bit. He worked his way into the game and looked really comfortable. And by the end of it, he goes off, he gets a standing ovation, they sing his name. Like that's what you want from that sort of performance. And it's because of all of the bits that go on around him. Mainly Jesus, who, yes, his goal scoring is phenomenal, but he's a bit, and it's a bit of a criticism of Lacazette and Aubameyang, because maybe they're just different types of players, but Jesus is so willing to work hard for his teammates that it just makes those players behind him then work harder for him. It sounds so basic, but it just is so obvious that that's what's going on at all times. The interplay between each player is really, really good. Saka gets a couple of assists in this game as well, lovely crossing and that sort of thing. Like, it's just, there's a real connection with Arsenal. I'm a big fan of what Arteta's doing, actually, I've got to say, and I'm a big fan of the way they play. They defensively look so secure with and without the ball. It's just a quality performance again from them against the sides that have caused teams like Arsenal real problems in recent seasons, and arguably have caused Arsenal problems in recent seasons. And it felt like the sort of game, as an Arsenal fan watching this, let me know, it felt like the sort of game in previous years, without someone like Jesus and without Xhaka playing in a slightly different role, and we'll talk about him in a moment, that you wouldn't have won in previous years. And that's exciting. That is what will get you back in the top 4. Games like that one today. And we should mention Granit Xhaka as well, who has moved position slightly. He's no longer going to be... Never play him as the sole defensive player ever. In fact, you shouldn't even really play him in a 2. And you might say, well, he's playing in a 2 with Partey at the moment. No, he's not. He's playing slightly further up in sort of a roaming playmaker role, to use a football managerism. It's wicked. He's not scored goals or got that many assists. Of course, he got one today. But he's just so good in the role. He just suits it really well. His passing has never been a question mark, really. It's all the other bits, some of his defensive positioning. But when you allow him the freedom to give that up a little bit, and you've got Tierney, and or Zinchenko's played there as well, right? And you've got the protection of Partey behind, it's really easy for Granit Xhaka to just play his game. And when he does that, and he's got the freedom to do so, he looks really good. He looks like the player they thought they bought years ago. And I think he's going under the radar. Like, team of the season, City unbeaten, and Xhaka in team of the year. Have I had a drink? Or do I need one? Blimey. And to top it off, they brought on a 15-year-old, which makes me feel horrendous. Ethan Nwaneri, I hate him. Not because he's 15. No, because he's 15. I'm 32. Good God. They said he was born in 2007. I'd have school in 2000. Oh my God. Arsenal back to the top of the table. Let's move on. And then to round us off this weekend, it was Everton versus West Ham. 2 teams that were in desperate need, it felt like, of league wins. And Everton are the team then to come out on top with a Morpie finish. A lovely goal. And it kind of proves the point we were saying about Everton for a long time. get yourself a striker that's going to score goals, and you might end up winning some games. And well, the game in which he scores a goal in, get out, they finally do win a game. And for Everton then, they transform themselves from a winless in 6 to a unbeaten in 5 record. 4 wins, four draws, sorry, they had in a row before the win today. And what a different outlook now it will be at Goodison. It now makes them look hard to beat, right? It's all the cliches of football. And again, winning a game against the West Ham side that to me are the bigger story. They have got a fantastic record in Europe, beating teams that some of us won't have heard of. And actually, it's masking the fact that their form inside of the Premier League has been woeful since February, you might argue. Absolutely no consistency from West Ham whatsoever. And yes, last year they had the European run, and that was affecting things a little bit. They've brought in Scamacca this year, and they're not starting him in every game, despite the fact he cost a lot of money. It didn't work with Haller for them before. And David Moyes, that seems to be his only other option. They look like a team, frankly, that are out of ideas. And I don't know if they're just finding the 2 games a week thing like difficult now, especially with the amount of games they had last year and that continuation this season, of course, with the amount of European games you have to play. It's a lot of traveling, it's a lot of football, the ups and downs of playing like quite soft games, frankly, in European football, and then having to face teams that are doing everything to win in the Premier League. That's outdoing them. And again, the contrast with Antonio and Scamacca and how you're going to play with those 2 strikers, it's conflicting for West Ham. And they're a team that overall just look and feel conflicted to me. And until they get themselves in a rhythm, which with the amount of games they've got is very, very hard to do, West Ham are in danger of being dragged into a relegation battle because of the amount of football they're playing. But they've obviously got the quality to be a top half team. But we've seen it happen. Like there's going to have to be a point for David Moyes where he decides this is where our focus is, this is where our priority is. And right now, I don't necessarily think it is on Europe. I just think the teams they're playing are slightly easier and they should be winning those games. But there might have to be a switch where they take some risks in those games, playing weaker sides. The fact they've won a few of those games now means they can probably afford to rest a few players in those games as much as possible, allowing yourself to have a consistent Premier League 11, play week in, week out. It's a problem, right? Again, they've only got 1 win away at Villa against the Villa side that weren't particularly good at the time. Next up, Wolves, Fulham, Southampton. We talked about Southampton before. Like that game could be massive. And if they don't win, I'm going to say 2 of those games, the question marks on those on David Moyes and that team are going to be frightening and very, very obvious. So they have to be concerned about that. Again, a huge win for Everton. It looks great now. Again, a bit winless in 6, Tom being in 5. They're going to have to be through with that. And they march on. And it's time then for our winners and losers of the week. And we'll start off with our losers of the week, as ever. In 3rd place, it is David Moyes. Like the job that he's got to do now to wrestle this back. West Ham fans, they will turn, and you can hardly deny them that opportunity because it's not going well. In 2nd, and they're on this list all the time, Nottingham Forest. Every time you throw away a lead, you're going on this list. There, I'm saying it now. And at the top of the list, he might be gone by the time we get to the next set of fixtures. Brendan Rodgers is our biggest loser of the week. A 6-2 defeat, and the manner in which it's happening, there needs to be change at Leicester, and he's probably the man that's going to suffer that. Let's get to the winners, though. Let's end more positively. Why not? And let's talk through then. Our equally, 3rd on the list for the losers was David Moyes, and 3rd on the list for the winners is Frank Lampard. Again, turning like I'm loving this phrase. Winless. I get it right eventually. Winless in 6, unbeaten in 5. They're now something to believe in, I think, at Everton, and that's what they've really been missing. Something to get behind and see progress. And I think finally, I guess, especially winning a game at home, that's before the international break as well, massive for them. In 2nd place, bit of an odd one, but I bigged him up before. Granit Xhaka, the unspoken of player in the Arsenal side that deserves more credit. The centre back line has been really good. The forward line has been fantastic, but Xhaka's been a big part of that. So just to give him the credit, really, just to give him the nod and the tip of the cap, we'll put him in there. And then at the top of the tree, it's a 16-minute hat-trick for Son. How can you not put him up there? Unbelievable. He's back. Maybe. We'll see. Again, big decisions for Conte, and Son, of course, will be a big part of that. And that concludes the look back. You thought I wasn't going to do it? Of course I'm going to do it. The look back for this week. Thank you for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and there'll be more football content coming later this week, as well as some Football Manager bits and pieces. So keep an eye out for that as well. See you soon. Goodbye.